All right, so my name is Kailash, and I'll be your mediator today, together with my colleagues Adisa and Ismail. Now, the idea behind this series is quite simple. I think over the past few years, we've been hearing how important data is, especially in context of making better decisions and helping to drive the whole digital transformation. And while many companies kind of understand the importance of data, very few understand how know how to leverage it beyond their standard and often static reporting. So it give you all, from a business perspective, real-world examples of how our clients are using their data to power various aspects in the organization, both improving their efficiencies and also their operational and strategic decision making. And our goal really is to, through these talks, we'll help spark, ideas in your mind so that you could, on how you can leverage your data to make a big impact in your company. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to the effervescent team of Miles Baker and Marcus Pesanta of Ratio, who will take you through how they use data and driving performance and decision making at Heritage. So Miles, Marcus, over to you.
Kailash, thank you very much for the introduction and welcome everyone to how BI solutions are driving decision making at Heritage. So next slide for us, Marcus. The agenda for today is I'm going to explain how we have defined a performance management solution and then address a key challenge for IT teams. I'll touch on the digital transformation key challenge. I'll also explain and explore our view on the challenge for business intelligence deployments based on our experience mainly in Trinidad. I'll show you the business intelligence journey from what we've called Excel hell to predictive data analytics before I hand over to Marcus, who will showcase a live demonstration of just one BI solution deployed in collaboration with intelligent applications. What I'm going to do is our first 4 parts will take probably 6 to 8 minutes. Marcus will probably take about 8 to 10 minutes to walk you through the live demo, allowing us about 10 minutes for question and answers towards the end. So next slide, Marcus. Firstly, a very brief introduction to 1.618 ratio. As Kailash has said, and I've just broadly introduced Marcus, he's our technology director. 1.618 ratio is a performance improvement implementation consultancy. We work with businesses in all sectors to transform the way they manage performance across all aspects of business operations, from strategy to planning, to a deep focus on how the frontline employees actually work to change behavior that delivers real and sustained business results. Performance management solutions and the decisions that are driven by fact-based data and analytics are core to the delivery of what we do. Okay, so firstly, this isn't necessarily a worldwide recognized definition. It's a 1.618 ratio definition, and it's one that we've adapted over the course of the last 25 years. So from our perspective, it's a structured leadership meeting system from level 1 executive to level 2 management to level 3 supervisory that includes data input in the form of intelligent dashboards that enable leaders to decide on performance improvement actions that can be tracked to closure and where the results of the actions improve business performance. The problem that we've experienced in most businesses we work with is that data and data analytics is largely viewed as being an IT problem that IT need to fix. So the first step for us on the business intelligence journey is to work with leaders to ensure they own and then drive the use of data and data analytics solutions. Next slide, Marcus. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all the data points. So we've kind of recognized that digital transformation is changing the way that we work and interact with the world. That's it, thanks. So one of the data points on the building blocks of digital transformation, 25% of enterprises worldwide will drive a 5-fold increase in data and data infrastructure. In the what's next block, the investment in digital technology in the next 3 to 4 years is almost exponential. And the business returns on the investments are absolutely staggering. The bottom line from our perspective is that data and how to structure and use it as a form of competitive advantage is now more important than it's ever been. So next slide. So I'm not going to go through all of the points on this slide. I'm just going to highlight 3. And this is based on our experience of deploying business intelligence solutions across multiple sectors that we've just identified some core and key lessons. So 3 in particular. Firstly, and importantly, we found that if the CEO champions the use of business intelligence as a decision-making capability, the success of deployments increases by 80%. Just anecdotally, one CEO in Trinidad, an energy company, refused to look at any visualizations unless they were driven by an underlying data model and then consumed and reported in Power BI. Secondly, leaders failed to understand how much investment is required in people and data infrastructure to deploy BI solutions. So almost all leaders we've spoken to really like the pretty dashboards up front, and almost all of them want them immediately.
So true.
No understanding yet of how long it takes to build a structured data model that underpins the way that they consume the visualizations and therefore analyze the data and therefore work out what the most effective decisions are for their business. And then thirdly, leaders don't recognize the new capabilities required to operate in a data-rich environment. And the failure to invest in people or understand why these roles are needed is primarily the foundation of why they fail to implement or recover the investment in their business intelligence deployments. Okay, and then the final slide before I hand over to Marcus. Based on our joint research, we've identified 4 main stages in the use of business. Well, that's, so I'm just going to wait for somebody on mute. That's good. Thank you very much. So based on our joint research, we've identified 4 stages in the use of business intelligence solutions, from basic to strategic. Basic is reporting generated by what we called up front an Excel hell environment. Tactical is the first stage where business intelligence solutions are deployed. And for many businesses, this just means using BI generated reports to drive decision making. So in effect, what I've done is I've kind of got an Excel version of a dashboard, deployed a business intelligence solution. I've got the same dashboard with probably some added features like filters and a couple of other things in there. But I'm basically using the same report that I was using in Excel, to take the same decisions that I was taking when I was using Excel, which isn't really the implementation of business intelligence that recovers value. The real value of BI is when leaders and organizations start using the data to generate real intelligence. That's kind of Microsoft intelligent queries. And this now becomes a source of real competitive advantage. The final stage is where most businesses want to get to. They all say, can I kind of get there by, 3 or 4 months? Our view is it takes at least 2 to 3 years to get from stage 1 to stage 4, where you've built enough capability in the organization to understand how and where to use predictive business intelligence. The red circle indicates where Heritage now is on that journey. So, kind of a broad overview of our view on what all of this means. And I'm going to hand it over to Marcus now, who's going to walk you through a live Power BI front-end solution. Please understand that the data you're looking at is not real, obviously for privacy reasons. Marcus, over to you.
All right. Good afternoon, all of you. And I see some familiar names and faces out there. So welcome all and thank you for making the time to attend. All right. So I'm just going to switch gears here slightly and I'm going to share with you a live environment, right? It's live because it's in Power BI now, and this is not meant to be a highly technical session, but we're simply showing you how to leverage dashboards and data in Power BI to make decisions. What we have here is a repository of actual dashboards that we've built for customers in different sectors. You can see it's in the finance sector, energy sector, in the services sector. All right. Again, we're not showing you real data out there. We've put in dummy data to support this, but the dashboards themselves are real and are being used in anger, so to speak, out in the wild. All right. So we've got a portal here set up, and you can see here if I flip through some of them. For an energy company, we've got dashboards that tackle oil and gas production, financial performance, health, safety, security, environment, HR, IT, maintenance, and then we've got reports that roll up to like the managerial and the board committee level. What I'd like to take you through is through one of these dashboards in particular, which is for human resources. All right. And under human resources, we've got several areas, which is communications, demographics, and recruitment. And we're going to take a deeper look at communications. I've got that open already here, and this is the communications suite of dashboards. And you can see we've got several categories: town halls, survey response, survey engagement, communications, and an overview. So we're going to take one of those reports. So this is, again, these are dashboards being used out in the wild in anger, so it's structured to meet the needs of an actual energy company. Just the data is not real. So you'll see here, these are the results that we've tabulated into a repository of a survey done of employees. And by the way, this survey is done electronically. So we've tabulated all the data in there. You can see we've tabulated 1,133 survey responses. And you can see that this is split up by different data fields, including the demographics, the sex of the respondent, the department that the respondent is in, the age, the years of service, the employee grade, and of course there are multiple surveys going on over time. And if you look in the bottom left-hand corner, you will see that we've got a slicer that can give us reports as per time. So we can zoom in on any one particular survey. Of course, these surveys are being run 2-3 times a year. So how do we make decisions based on the data presented here, right? So when you first look at it, it's data overload. But if we zoom in, we can see that the things that stand out to us is that we can see where trends are particularly low. And we can look at one survey in particular, which is the Jan 21 survey, and we can zoom in on the engagement score for that. If we scroll to the bottom of those scores, we can see that the categories that scored the lowest were work-life balance and resources. So that tells the HR department and the communications department, and most importantly, the management team, where the potential problems lie, just at a couple of clicks. Now, if we were to try to analyze this data from Excel, you'd be looking at tables upon tables and be reliant on pivot tables and have the skills to do pivot tables yourself to generate this. And if we zoom in on work-life balance, we can see what the demographics about the respondents who rated work-life balance to that level, and what grades those people were, what years of service they've got, what's their age distribution, even their sex, and what their department is. That gives the communications department and the HR department the data upon which they can decide, well, maybe what we need to do is to engage our employees more on work-life balance, to run campaigns on it, and to have a better idea of exactly which employees to actually focus on, rather than going scattershot and going based on hunches. So whilst this is a very simple example of how to use the data, we think that by having this kind of flexibility for large numbers of your employees, not just your management team, but for employees, for your teams, for your functional teams to be able to tap into data like this, and you can extrapolate this onto financial data, onto production data, where you can spot trends over time. You can zoom in on specific aspects of the trends practically in real time and live and direct on your dashboard. All right.
And Marcus, if I may, just to add to a little bit of flavour, is that particularly in Heritage, they've used a similar structure to the data around employee survey results. Their primary driver is to improve employee satisfaction index.
Correct.
Across the entire business. And the one thing that they want to do is they want to prove to the business that they've listened to their employees. Their employees have told them that diversity and work-life balance are their biggest issues. And what they did in Heritage, which is awesome, is they set up cross-functional teams using a continuous improvement methodology approach to look at fixing work-life balance, maybe not fixing it kind of all the way through, but certainly resolving it enough to enable, over a period of time, the overall employee satisfaction index to improve, and therefore the way that employees relate to that organization improved overall. And when you rerun the survey in the next town hall, actually the data then shows you how that improvement is manifested. So
absolutely correct.
Live example of how a business has taken a decision, they've used the analytics platform to hone in on what decision they want to take, and that's driven a bunch of activity where the business result is absolutely 100% clear.
Excellent. So let me just skip back to the presentation, and we'll have time for some questions, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what what technical platforms that we actually run this on. All right, so little plug here for Microsoft. We are ourselves and Intelligent Applications are Microsoft partners, and we strongly believe that the Microsoft stack really offers the lowest cost and best TCO in terms of deploying a BI solution similar to this, right? So to support our dashboards, we typically use a SQL database hosted in Microsoft Azure. As you can see, we use Power BI on the front end as a visualization tool. And to get the data in, we either tap in directly to data sources, so SAP, even if you've got a survey tool, SurveyMonkey, spitting that out into some kind of database, probably a SQL database to store. You can actually even tap into those same old Excel sheets and everything, but we try to move the data to a permanent data store. And we commonly use Microsoft Power Apps if we've got to do data entry for manual sources of data on a regular basis. But the key thing is, using the Microsoft stack, it takes away the intimidating factor of entering into BI. And BI itself, if you're doing analytics at a very high level, you're talking about spending oodles of money on setting up the data structures just to make sure that your experts can use their front-end visualization tools. What we've found is that with the Microsoft stack, you can quicker and cheaper get maybe not your frontline people, but at least your supervisory and back office people actually developing their own Power BI dashboards and doing mini analytics. You're not talking about groundbreaking advanced analytics, but enough where they can make decisions like what we've actually shown you today. All right. So I think that brings us to the substantive part of the presentation. I think we wanted to progress into a Q&A discussion. Miles? Are you muted, Miles?
Yes, you're absolutely right. I am muted. That's probably the best way for me to be, according to my wife, anyway. So what we're going to do is hand it back to Kailash. I think Kailash is going to moderate. So we'll take questions, and the questions are open for Marcus and I, but for anyone else on the Intelligent Applications team, it may also apply, particularly where the question might be more technical in nature.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have two avenues of asking questions. You can type your question out on the chat and we will just take it to Miles and Marcus. Or if you just raise your hand, I will unmute you and you can ask your question directly. So I know during the presentation, one person did have a request. They wanted to know if we could have a look at the production dashboard. Is that possible?
I think we can. Just give me a sec. I'll pull it up on the. We'll take a quick look at one of these samples of it.
Okay. And in the meantime, does anybody else have any other questions they would like to ask Miles or Marcus?
Yes, there's a hand up.
There's a hand up. Let me see who it is. Okay. All right. Kamal, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah. Hi, Kailash. You guys are hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. Actually, I just wanted to ask if I can see the maintenance dashboard as well, just to get a flavor. Marcus, you touched on something really good, the employee satisfaction survey. To me, it was a bit busy, but one of the key issues when I had gone through this in a previous life was to link the results of that survey to the action plan, to progress on the action plan. So I could see from what you showed how easy it is to do that. So that was a nice teaser that you showed. I'd appreciate if you can share the maintenance dashboard as well, so I can take a look at what can be done basically.
So let me answer that question specifically. So on the maintenance dashboard, the primary KPIs you're looking at are the initial stages of an EAM implementation, so enterprise asset management implementation. And you're looking at things like work order compliance, safety critical equipment compliance, i.e. work orders scheduled over work orders actually completed on target completion date. So I don't actually think there is anything in the maintenance box on the dashboard, because when we started this,
That's correct.
we found that the clients were about 18 months away from implementing the data on ERP, EAM, in order to be able to provide the data that went into that KPI.
That's correct.
So without that base data in an ERP, you can have the best metrics in the world. You're making nonsense out of an Excel base on pull of work orders, for example. It's just not, it's not correct. And two, it's not of the right quality. So I think the best thing to do is if you're okay, is look at the information that we've got in front of you on production. And this is for a different energy company in the energy sector space on that dashboard portal we showed you earlier.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, so Miles is completely right. We found that so we don't, whilst we've got templates, we customize every solution for our clients. And what we found is that on the maintenance side, they're really gearing, they're not at a point where they've got the data sets where we can translate that on the dashboards. In addition to that, their native maintenance apps actually do a lot of the churn for them, particularly around generating work orders. But if I could just draw your attention to the production report that we've got in front of us, right? And you can see that typically on the left here, the different slices of production reports. So you've got well reports, you've got daily reports, and then you've got reports over time that actually gauges the production, and it tracks both condensate and gas. So again, heavily customized for this client in question. But again, it got to a point with this client when we launched this dashboard that every morning the finance directors of all people would go to this first of all, because it gave them exactly what they needed to know on a daily basis about the amount of condensate being produced. And if you know anything about how gas production works, is that those little troughs that you see there are painful parts for a company that's expected to produce at that level. So in seconds, you can tell that this company had a fantastic record. This fictitious company with fictitious data had a fantastic record of producing, and then something went down here, and well, on another graph, you could probably, decide whether that was planned or unplanned activity. All right. Okay. Any other questions?
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Yes?
We have some questions in chat, so you all can answer them, and if you need any help answering, I could go ahead.
Okay, I'm seeing a question there from Daniel about, are there BI templates to guide design of visualization? The question is yes. So we've got templates for most of the clients that we've dealt with for most of these sectors, and we start with a standard set of templates. Almost all the time, those things are very heavily customized for the clients, and they're really bespoke when you drill down to it. But yes, we start from templates, and in fact, one of the great things about Power BI, and in fact any top-notch visualization tool, but especially with Power BI, there's a lot out of the box, and you can start running with it right away. The intelligent application folks on the line, Kailash, Yajish, Ismail, will tell you the key to this sort of process is not so much your fancy dashboards. It's about getting the data right and organized. And on the other side of things, what Miles spoke about, getting that leadership engagement and the culture of the organization around those decisions. Miles, you want to tackle the next one? How do you handle data literacy with the organization?
Yeah, and that's a kind of a really good question. So data literacy, current state without BI deployed, is all kind of based on an Excel pull. In 80% of the cases, that Excel pull is almost entirely manual. I go into ERP, I extract the data manually, and I load it into an Excel spreadsheet. It's a nightmare. So you would say that their data literacy at that level is, let's say, 1 to 5 is a level 1. When they've understood the full impact of business intelligence, what you then do is at the point of deployment, what we've done is working with IA is we engage the business to not only to provide their data source owners, the data source of the person who either knows where that data field sits in an ERP or can extract it from a system and load it into a Power App. That's the data source owner. The second thing is you've got a business owner of the data, the person who's going to use it in the leadership meeting to take the decision. That's another point. So in effect, you're improving data literacy at the data source owner level and at the business owner level. But what we also do, and this is part and parcel of every deployment, is we build the capability of the power users. Now, you're not getting them to play in SQL and build data tables and run calculations in SQL and build a Power App. But what you are doing is getting them to understand how the data is modeled and then be able to use that data modeled in SQL to publish in Power BI and set up their own graphs, run their own visualizations. And that goes back to the same point that BI templates. You've got a lot of great visualization templates in Power BI desktop, and it's a question of learning which one do you use in order to drive the right decision.
Right. Good. Kailash, Anil Samasar had a question. If you could let our friend Anil in.
Mic on now.
Welcome, Anil.
Anil, you could unmute your mic and ask the question.
Hey guys, thanks so much. Good afternoon, everyone. So I do have a question. I think you guys answered part of it. It was really around the data acquisition piece. So I understand that you guys have a lot of challenges around getting the right data and the right quality of data. I mean, how have you guys been able to get around that?
Miles?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's just take finance, for example. So 4 or 5 of our customers obviously want to report their financial performance, obviously. And what tended to happen was that because they were using Excel, the Excel report went to the leadership and when we went to the board. Now, when they started using business intelligence, what we did is we put a validation step in place. So although they're using manual data from ERP, the owner of the data, not at the data source owner level, but at the accounts level, like the financial controller, actually validates the data before it gets published into a Power BI report. That's one aspect. The second aspect is that, when we can deploy a solution that connects to native data source, so ERP to SQL to Power BI, what it actually means is I cannot escape whether or not that is either an erroneous transaction in the ERP, it is a transaction, it is real. And therefore, you're trying to get the leadership to understand, connect to native data source, and then you don't need to run those quality checks and those validations and those approvals because it's actually real and it's near real time. So if you set up Power BI on a refresh basis of, let's say, 3 a day, and I've posted 65 invoices on that day, it will pick all of those up, plus the values, and then report those in your Power BI dashboard. Now, to be honest, it may not be the business result the business want to look at. Oh my God, we performed really badly. Hang on a minute, this is real data, published nearly real time. What are you going to do about it now? So you get out of that horrible cycle of validated, verifiable, validated data. Because you can end up in this horrible cycle where you don't actually use the data you've got because it's going through this validation cycle. Hence, as much as possible, connect the customer back to native data source based on how they're using their ERP, and then drive business process compliance on the ERP side, not on the reporting side. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat. I'll tell you why. So from our perspective, we do a lot of work around IoT and industrial IoT, and it's more about automating some of the manual processes and taking away some of the opportunities that you could get wrong data coming in the first place.
Yeah.
So is there like opportunities for that then?
Well, okay. So Anil, in effect, it's a similar answer to the first one. You've got a business process built back into the way that you use ERP, right? So what you're trying to do is take the data that comes out of that on the business process and then report that in through SQL, through Power BI. Now, if you take a slightly more sophisticated approach, you're using something like low-code business process, Creatio, that type of stuff, which may be what you're talking about, that enables workflow, there's absolutely no reason based on an IoT solution that you can't take those control points that publishes that data and then publish that back into SQL and back into Power BI. There's no reason why you can't do that.
Yeah, and to add to that, that's why we partner with intelligent applications. To be quite honest, this intelligent application team here, there is no better team out there that we found to help us organize data. And working with intelligent applications in the past, we've tapped into SCADA systems, we've tapped into maintenance repositories, ERP systems, SAP, right? And where we don't have the data, we compromise and we quickly find a way of either downloading and batch filing the data, or even manual data entry if need be, if that's what the management team needs to make a decision. And particularly where we've got where subsequently after months or a year, where you've got new systems coming on board that can actually give that data in real time. It's the flexibility of handling multiple data sources. Yeah.
Okay, just before we move on to this another question, I'd like to inject, and thank you so much for that endorsement there, Marcus.
Anytime.
Anil, what you can do, as they say, is that when you get your data from, if I assume from IoT sources, you can have a staging database where you put that data and then run various algorithms on it to help clean it up where possible. So sometimes it might, in an IoT system, you might get wrong data points coming in because at that point in time something disturbed it or whatever. But using statistical methods, you could probably detect those and eliminate it. And then there are other methods like that you can use to help where clean up your data sources when you can't do it at the front end. The best place is the front end, but if you can't do that there, the next best place is that there are methods behind. All right, so I want to move on. There's a question in chat. Can you explain more the difference between data source owner and data owner, please?
Yes, absolutely. So start of a BI deployment is start with a metric. So what metric do you need in your business to drive decision making? And then what you do is you work backwards to where does that data source come from? So what we would typically do on any deployment before we sign off on a deployment plan is define the metric. Frequency of the data, where does the data sit, who is accountable for sourcing the data, who's accountable for validating it, which meeting it's going to go into, and so on. So what you've got is a data source owner is the person who is actually entering the data. So I've got an invoice on my desk. I'm putting the invoice into ERP. I'm then receiving that on a three-way match on my finance system. I am the owner of that data. The data owner is actually the owner of the decision that needs to be taken based on that data. So for example, I've now got a dashboard. That dashboard is created for a finance manager. The data owner, in this case, not the source owner, the data owner is the person who is accountable for taking the decision based on the management report provided by that data from that data source owner. Does that make sense? I think that was Ronald.
I think that was Ronald.
Okay. All right. Any more questions from anyone?
Wow.
The classic question, Miles.
Okay. So, easy answer is, Ronald, have you seen Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man? So you can nod yes or click or stick a hand up. Okay, so 1.618 ratio is the golden ratio. It exists throughout nature in financial systems, in architecture, in music. It's based on the Fibonacci sequence, which is 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 1 = 3, 3 + 1, and so on, all the way down. The last number divided by the one before it always equals 1.618. And it governs, it's you, it's how you are in nature. And that ratio applies to you, Ronald, as it applies to Marcus or me. And the reason that we've used it is that every business needs to manage performance, even if you're a double seller, even if you're a multi-billion-dollar financial institution. And what we're trying to do is signify that 1.618 ratio relates to the way that you have to manage performance in your business. Hence the reason for a performance management system. There you go. But it is the same thing.
All right. Okay. Any more questions from the field? Nope. Well, I guess. Okay.
Thank you all for attending, and thanks for the fantastic questions.
Well, yes, again, thank you all very much for coming and listening to us today. And thank you, Miles and Marcus, for your great presentation.
Anytime, Carlos.
I really hope it does start to spark in your minds, things that how you could use data within your organization. And just to mention, our series continues next week. We will have Richard Mano, who was a former TAR manager at BP, and he will speak about how they use data to drive operational improvements within the running a TAR. For those of you who don't know, a TAR is a very critical operation in the energy sector. It is when they shut down their plant for a certain period to do maintenance work. Now, when you shut down a plant in the energy sector, that ultimately means you're making zero money in that period. So, you can't really afford delays. A half-day delay could probably run into the millions of dollars. I don't know. Miles and Marcus will be able to see. But it's very costly. Any delay in a TAR is extremely costly. So it's important to get that, done on time. So he will talk about that next week. So please join us again next week, same time, same sort of format. And we'll be continuing the session on until December. So once again, thank you, everybody. And we'll hopefully see you again next week.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.